Good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear me?
Robert Cole is a senior registered environmental health specialist working with the Southern Nevada Health District. Prior to moving to Las Vegas, he received his bachelor's degree in biology from San Diego State University. Since arriving in Las Vegas, he has also worked in surgical medicine as a certified anesthesia technician with a preference for trauma patient care. During his 15-year career in environmental health, Robert has worked on various public health projects including surveillance for mosquito-borne diseases such as West Nile virus, Western equine encephalitis virus, and rodent-borne diseases including plague and hantavirus, coordinating public health responses to several multiple facility-related outbreaks of norovirus, outbreaks and single-case investigations of Legionnaires' disease, and he wrote and directed the water management program for a 29-bed COVID patient isolation and recovery site. Robert enjoys the community outreach portions of his job and still finds it exciting when water sample results are received. In his free time, Robert enjoys family time with his two sons and fostering shelter dogs.
Okay, hey everybody. Good morning. Yeah, those are foster dogs in my picture. And if I'm a little slow with my presentation, it's because I am actually holding all of them right now, just like that. So I'm a little bit of a technology lacking. So if there's any issues, I'll take responsibility, but we'll muddle through this thing. It's going to be good. So thanks everybody for putting this presentation on. And if there's a moderator that needs to jump in at any time, just let me know. I'm pretty loosey-goosey with my presentations. And yeah, let's go ahead and do this thing. So I coordinate the Legionnaires Disease program here at the Southern Nevada Health District. And in addition, I work in surgery, and all a anesthesia tech basically does is we are the second set of hands for your anesthesiologist. So our main and primary goal is to secure your airway for surgeries. And so both with Legionnaires' disease and my other job in surgery, it's all about the lungs and your airway. So I'm pretty into helping people breathe. So with Legionnaires' disease, there's a really good TV show episode. It's on the 1976 Philadelphia outbreak, and I can't think of the name. It's a pretty, gosh, I want to say like cold case study or something along that nature. But they did an investigation or an episode on the initial outbreak. Yeah, thanks, John. My partner in crime here, John, told me it's forensic files. So if you really want to get an in-depth look at the initial outbreak, just go on YouTube and watch the forensic files episode on Legionnaires' disease. But what it boils down to is a group of Legionnaires had a convention. There's hundreds of them there in Philadelphia at the Bellevue Stratton Hotel, I think it was called. And they all came down, not all of them, but hundreds of them came down with mystery illness. And it was the bicentennial. And what happened is all these people started getting sick and no one knew what was going on. And there was lots of things happening in the area at the time. There was a sanitation worker strike. So trash was piling up on the streets. They didn't know if it was a bioterror attack at the time. So lots of things were happening at once. They really didn't know what it was. And it took a while for them to identify it. But 34 people dead. 2/3 of the people were hospitalized with pneumonia. And after they were able to determine it, they found the bacteria and they named it Legionella pneumophila. And Legionella is just because of the American Legion Convention, the Legionnaires.
Hey, Robert.
So, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Do you have a slide that you want to be presenting right now?
Did I not share? I'm so sorry. See,
no, you're good.
Hold on. Let's do this again. My apologies, everybody. How about now? Can you all see that?
Yes, we can see the PowerPoint now.
Oh, wow. See, I apologize, everybody. I'm so good at building water systems and doing outbreak investigations, but I'm horrible at computers. So here we go. It was the American Legion, 1976, and they found out the bacteria was Legionella pneumophila. So we're going to just get into some basic terms, and this audience, meaning you folks watching, you have such a high understanding of environmental health that these terms are not even really that necessary. Honestly, I think you guys know all this stuff, but we're going to go ahead and present this stuff in case anyone has any questions. So get us all on the same page. So the germs and the slime in a pipe, it's your biofilm, right? So what happens as the water runs through water system and pipes, just sediment grows and settles, and biofilm gets a place on that sediment, and it becomes slimy and nasty and grows bacteria. If you ever take the P trap off underneath your sink in your bathroom, you'll see exactly how disgusting the biofilm can be. And that's where the bacteria grows. And these are in alphabetical order, so it's not necessarily following the flow of a disease investigation. So your building water systems are hot and cold water systems. And also what's not included on this is you're also going to want to include your sprinkler systems, your fire safety prevention type things, the things that shoot the water off when there's a fire, because all that can become contaminated and expose people to bacteria as well. Dead legs. So if you were to take out your sink in one of your bathrooms at your residence, you're going to cap that off, and now the water is not flowing through there. It's not being flushed out on a regular basis. So that's an extreme dead leg where an actual fixture is removed and it's just going nowhere, and that water is 100% stagnated. But other dead legs can just be very slow moving turns in the water system. Like if your piping is going to turn 90 degrees, that can be a dead leg as well, because there's section of that 90-degree pipe that is not flowing freely. And Legionella is the bacteria that causes the disease, and Legionnaires disease is the pneumonia. One thing that we do here is investigate residential cases of Legionnaires disease. It's reported. So if anyone in Clark County or the state of Nevada goes to the doctor with pneumonia, they're going to test your urine for Legionella bacteria, and it's reportable. So your doctor is going to test you, report back to the state or the CDC that, yes, we have a confirmed case of Legionella, and then they're going to let us know. But if for some reason you don't go to the hospital and you get the flu and it's caused by the Legionella bacteria, your body can fight it off. And that's what we call Pontiac fever. So if you get exposed to the bacteria through inhalation and you don't fight it off, it becomes full-blown Legionnaires disease. And stagnation is pretty much when water doesn't flow well. Water age is a term you're going to hear often in this industry. And it's the amount of time it takes for the water to reach the point of use for the point of entry. So as soon as that water goes from the public water system into the building, from the time it comes out of the shower or the sink or the toilet or wherever. And now water management program, this is something we deal with all the time in Legionella. It's commonly called WMP. So you'll hear people colloquially talking about WMPs. So it's a step it's a multi-process steps that you take to develop a program for your building water system to prevent illness. So one of the things that is, it's also called as a water management plan. So water management plan is the same thing as a water management program, and they're used interchangeably. So where do you find Legionella? It's naturally found in the water. It's a waterborne bacteria, but it doesn't necessarily proliferate in a lake or a stream or things like that. Yeah, if you test it, you're going to find it, but where it really takes hold and causes issues is when you get into building water systems. So your spas, your cooling towers, misting systems out here, most of our hotels in Las Vegas, they don't have misters anymore, specifically because of Legionnaires disease outbreaks that we've had. So if you look at my arrow here, like the cooling tower there in the picture, if we're going to sample those things, you sometimes have to get on tall ladders to get up there. I'm not sure how they are. I'm sure you have a million cooling towers in Maricopa County at just alone, but those can be difficult to sample. So as you're listening to me babble about Legionella, keep in mind, do you do investigations, and is your jurisdiction responsible to do an investigation if there's a confirmed case or if there's a confirmed outbreak, things like that. So all these 4 pictures are things we see on a regular basis out here. You got your spa, the water heater for residential investigations. We look at those all the time, common breeding source for the bacteria. And then here on the lower right, that's a big pump room for one of our big casino hotels. I don't know which casino, but one of our staff probably took that actual photo. So that's that. Okay, what about the bacteria? So much like animals, let's just say dogs, there's different breeds of dogs. You got Chihuahuas and you have German Shepherds. They're both dogs, but they're just different types or varieties. Same thing with Legionella. There's lots of varieties or serogroups or serotypes. The most commonly tested for serogroup is Legionella pneumophila serogroup 1. So most of the disease investigations are centered around serogroup 1. Doesn't mean that the other serogroups aren't as prolific in the water systems. It just means they're not tested for as much. The commonly used testing method is a urine antigen, where patients go to the hospital and they test your urine that only tests for serogroup 1. So that's a big part of why serogroup 1 is the main causative bacteria. It grows best between 68 to 115, and human body temperature is right in that area, and that's why it affects humans in these water systems. Our bodies are primed right in the middle of that temperature range to be perfect environments to grow in our lungs. And when you get poorly maintained water systems, you're going to end up with Legionella colonization. It's just a matter of time. So stagnation and water age and chlorine levels or disinfectant levels in the water, they're all going to come into play. So if you can correctly and properly maintain your water age, your stagnation, your disinfectant levels, things like that, you have a good shot of preventing Legionella in your water systems. So you now have, let's just say you have Legionella in your water. How do you kill it? What's it susceptible to? What damages this bacteria so you can clean up a water system? And there's 2 main ways to do it over time. It's heat and chlorine. So years ago, when I started doing this, I don't know, about 14, 15 years ago, we would find a facility out here. We'd do a disease investigation, and we'd go to these hotels and we'd test their water. We'd track where the patient stayed. And a patient came in from Arizona for a convention. And then 2 weeks later, they went back to Arizona and they tested positive for the bacteria. And then they stayed at Joe's hotel. And we'll go to the hotel and find out exactly what room Joe stayed in, and we'll test the water, and then it comes back positive. So then we'll work with the facility to help them remediate their water system. So years ago, a lot of facilities were using the superheating method. They ramp up their boilers or their water heaters, and they would flush really hot water through their pipes. And if you get the water hot enough and you're flushing it properly, you can kill that bacteria in about 2 minutes. But what happens is that superheating of the pipes can do more damage in the long term. Just the heat alone will cause those pipes to expand, and then the expansion of the pipes followed by the contraction of the pipes once it cools down can actually break off chunks of the biofilm. So that can cause more problems. So what facilities have found over time that by heating it up, you'll get an initial kill and then the water samples will come back non-detect. Down the road, because they broke up all that biofilm, they're going to have even worse Legionella issues. So nowadays, it's recommended that you don't use the superheating method of disinfectant. So hyperchlorination is one of the main ways we will see a facility clean up their water system. I don't recommend you tell a facility to do it themselves. Hire someone to do it, and then they add a chlorine pump, right? They tie it right into the water system, and they monitor it, and it's pretty effective. So some of these numbers are old, and you're going to see, so what's the impact of Legionella on public health, right? What does this all mean? We know about the bacteria, we know it exists, we know it causes pneumonia. So what now? And cases have been on the rise since 2000, and that's for a couple different reasons. One of the reasons we're seeing more cases is because buildings are getting older. Right now our buildings are older than they were a day ago. And if there is bacteria in that water, it's at a higher level than it was 2 weeks ago, so the buildings are getting older. Also, they're testing for it more. Doctors and more importantly, attorneys are well aware of Legionella at this point. So what happens is I've seen outreach by attorneys that will send public records requests to our public health department, to Southern Nevada Health District. To me personally, I'll get a public records request saying, hey, I would like any file for the past 2 years for Legionnaires Disease for Joe's Hotel on Las Vegas Boulevard. And so we have to provide that to them. So lawyers are out there fishing for cases, and the doctors aware of it. So, 20 years ago, you didn't see that at all. So that's one of the reasons cases are on the rise. And, we have an aging population. So the older you get, the more susceptible you are to Legionnaires disease. It affects immunocompromised patients. Illnesses peak in the summer and early fall because the pipes heat up, and the warmer it is, the quicker that water, or the quicker the bacteria grows. So exposures, in the wintertime usually have lower amounts of the bacteria, but seems like more people are getting exposed in the summer and early fall. So just for example, last May, just a couple of weeks ago or a couple months ago here, I was swamped with cases. We were getting a new case, it seemed like almost every week, like travel associated, a new residential cases. I was swamped with cases. And so it's tapered off now. That's the trend. So it's got a predictable yet still important trend to follow. So we're in now what we call our slow season, but we'll still get cases come here and there. And the most important statistic on this page is 1 in 10 people who get Legionnaires disease do not survive. If 10 of us in a room get it, 1 of us is going to die. And the 9 of us that survive, several of them are going to have very severe and permanent damage to your lungs. It could be your brain. Because I do a lot of residential investigation, we had a case out here where it was a factory worker, and he was exposed to a misting system in the factory. And they had a portable misting unit on this patient, and it wasn't properly maintained. They didn't have a water management program. And the very first time I interviewed the guy, it took about maybe 20 minutes just to get through the initial interview because he could barely speak. He was intubated in the ICU for about 2 weeks, and he did recover, but he could barely speak. That's how tough it was for him. His lungs were that scarred up. And then as the investigation proceeded over the next couple of months, I spoke to him several more times. And the last time I spoke to him, he was talking little more like a normal person without injured lungs would speak, so it was very interesting. And there's a famous case in Chicago where an attorney, a high profile attorney, contracted Legionnaires disease, and because he didn't go to the hospital right away, his, I believe, family members or friends found him, just really sick with pneumonia, and took him to the hospital, and he survived. But because of the lack of oxygen to his brain in the time period when he had that severe pneumonia, he had permanent brain damage and now has to use notepads and sticky notes all over his home to help him get through the day. So, yeah, he survived. He's in that 90% of people that survive, but just because you survive doesn't mean that this bacteria can't really devastate you. So keep that in mind. How do you get Legionnaire's disease? You inhale it, right? We could all drink a gallon of water that has Legionnaire's disease, and we're not going to get it unless you choke and inhale it or something like that. But it has to get into your lungs. So it's not spread person to person, and that's a very common question you get asked when you do residential investigations. We have one case now is are the family members going to get sick? And the answer is no. There is one case where a grandson was driving his grandmother to a doctor's appointment, and it was like a 5-hour car drive. It was in the winter time, so they had the heat jacked up, very small car, and he ended up testing positive. And they think it was person to person, but as far as I know, that's the only one. And outbreaks are typically occur where there's a common source of bacteria in the environment. So this picture down here on the left, showerhead, we test those all the time in our investigations. And it's very common to test positive. So if you don't maintain your water system or your fixtures, that's a very common source of exposure. So who is at risk? I just turned 50, so bingo. So 50 years or older. I've seen a stat that this a couple years ago, I think more men get it than women. Some like 50%, 56% of the cases are men. But 50 years or older, current or former smoker, chronic lung disease, weakened immune system, all this stuff, it makes sense. This bacteria attacks your lungs. So Legionella pneumophila, pneumo means lung, and phila means it likes. So pneumophila means it likes your lungs. So anything related with your lungs that are issues is going to put you up on the list of susceptible individuals. What are the symptoms? Initially for Pontiac fever, it's flu-like symptoms, fever, chills, and then it progresses into full-blown pneumonia. So how do symptoms appear, or how soon? When do you get symptoms, right? So if we were all, let's just hypothetically say we are all at this conference in a room, it's hot outside, and we have a misting system, and that misting system is keeping us cool for this conference. Misting system is compromised and it's just blowing Legionella on us, and we're all inhaling it. So we are all exposed. Those of us that don't fight off Pontiac fever, flu, and get full-blown, pneumonia, we're going to start exhibiting symptoms in 14 days. So 14 days is the magic number for Legionella, right? It's what we do a travel history on, when we talk to our patients, where were you 14 days prior to exposure? When we take the water samples, one of the standard water sampling method, it takes 14 days because, you have to wait 2 weeks. So that's about how long it takes for a lot of the water samples, because that's how long it takes for humans to get sick. Yeah, so why is Legionnaire's disease difficult to diagnose or underdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all? This is getting better over time, but it just wasn't a thing many years ago. Even 10 years ago, people didn't know about Legionnaire's disease. And they think it's just a normal pneumonia or it's a flu, and they'll put you on some random antibiotic for pneumonia, and and put you on some oxygen and call it good. So there's a couple different diagnostic tools for patients. You can do urine antigen test, which tests for serogroup 1. You can do blood tests or sputum tests, and those are the ones we prefer to get if you're in a regulatory agency, things like that, and you have access to sputum test results. You're going to want to get those because you can narrow it. You can get a DNA match on the bacteria if you do find it. So let's just say you're in the hospital with pneumonia, but they took your urine and they tested it, they're good, and they come back positive, right? It's not normal pneumonia, it's Legionnaires disease. They're going to switch your antibiotics. I think it's like levofloxacin and maybe azithromycin, something like that, but they're going to switch your antibiotics specifically for Legionella. And the longer it takes for them to figure out that it's Legionella, the longer it's going to take for you to recover. And so the longer your brain goes without getting proper oxygen levels. So it's very important. If you or any of your family members or friends, if you hear that they're going to the hospital with pneumonia, just tell them or tell someone to have them do a urine antigen test. If you take anything away from my presentation today, take that away. If you know anyone with pneumonia that goes to the hospital, request a urine antigen test. All right. So now that we got the basics of Legionella out of the way, we're going to run through how we handle an outbreak situation here in Las Vegas. And you can take this format, use it pretty much in any scenario. It could be a small hotel, a small hospital, a large facility. But what we have here is an outbreak scenario for a multiple building facility, like one of our hotels out here that has multiple towers and multiple risers. So each tower has different water risers. And this is primarily what we see. This is just a generic example, but this is very common scenario for our examples for our disease investigations. And I should let you know that here in Las Vegas at the Southern Nevada Health District, we investigate single cases of Legionellosis. So when the CDC notifies us that, hey, we have a positive case, it's not an outbreak at this point. Outbreak is 2 cases in a 12-month period. But we have a single case. Our team gets out to that facility, takes water samples, and we try and get to the bottom of it before there is a second case. Because for us, an outbreak here in Nevada, because we're such a tourism-centered industry, that's going to be a big deal for us. It's going to involve media announcements, multiple interviews. I've had to do them, and it's a nightmare. You say the wrong thing on the news, it can cause, a billion-dollar gaming corporation, millions and millions of dollars if you say the wrong thing, and it can get the wrong idea in the public. You don't want a panicked public out there, who thinks it's spread person to person and doesn't understand, Legionnaires disease. So what we have is 2 towers. Each tower has an upper riser and a lower riser. And we have a case room, this yellow triangle, that's where the patient stayed. And the distal room is the water flows in from the water heater, and it's going to go up. And the distal room for us is the furthest point from the water heater to the exposure site. That's the last hot water. It's the furthest away it's going to get before it goes back and the hot water returns. So it's a very important room for us, the distal room and the case room. So we go out there, we sample the case room, we sample the distal room, and we sample the hot water return. And this case investigation is going to hypothetically start on December 15th. So what we have now is, in this scenario right here, we tested positive for the bacteria in the distal room. So what we have the facility do is they test 1% of all the other rooms to see, do they just have the bacteria here, or is it spread throughout the facility? They disinfect the water riser, we retest. Now that distal room is non-detect, it's clean. Congratulations, you did a good job. You found the bacteria and you cleaned it. Now, a little bit later, we have a second case in October. So this is 10 months down the road from the first time we were at this facility. The first time was in December 15th. Second time was in October, I think we have here, or 11 months, however. It's still in a 12-month period. This is now a potential outbreak investigation because it's 12 months. If we test positive on these samples, it's going to be an outbreak. And sure enough, here we go. In the case room at this time in December, we tested positive. So now it's the same waterizer that we tested before, and there's media notifications, there's guest notifications. This is a very serious issue. And just for fun, we put another positive sample here. At this point, when we have positive samples, the facility is put on a sampling schedule every 2 weeks for 3 periods, every month for 3 months, and every quarter for 3 quarters after they remediate. So post-remediation water samples are taken. And they have to have non-detect samples. They have to have clean samples for them to progress to the next round of sampling. So even after they've done remediation on a facility, let's just say they hyperchlorinated their water system, even after it's now clean, they have to continue to take water samples and submit them to us. And at that point, it's done. So this is now 12 months after the second round of tests, a full almost 2 years later from our initial visit. All the tests have been non-detect for the water. The buildings are clean. Good job. At this point, the public has already forgot about it for the most part, and it's just routine water testing and sample collection. The health district does not take these samples. The facility is responsible for sampling. Okay, so now we know about the bacteria, the basics. We know about what a potential outbreak investigation could look like at a hotel or a hospital or a long-term care facility. Any number of places could have an outbreak. Apartment complex, anything. So where the rubber meets the road with Legionella and a facility is a water management program, WMP. And we're going to just get through the basics. When COVID happened, the health district here had a temporary facility built to house and isolate COVID positive patients. So if we had patients that were positive for COVID, but did not want, either they didn't have a place to recover, maybe they didn't have a place to live, or they wanted to recover outside of their home because they didn't want to expose their family, they could come here to the health district. So we had 29 beds for COVID positive patients, and we had a temporary water system built. And because it was a temporary system and we have such high, heat out here with the sun, like you guys do in Arizona, that water system was very challenging to develop a water management program, because the last thing you want to do as a public health agency is house someone in your facility and then give them Legionnaires disease. So my staff was well aware of water management programs, and we had the background, and we've done hundreds of investigations and reviewed them. But doing one on our own was quite a challenge, and the building itself was challenging. So I know from firsthand just how daunting this task is. So if it seems like I'm rushing through the basics of water management program, it's not because I don't understand the severity. So if you're ever in a position where you need to review or develop a WMP, just get on the CDC website and take their training, and it's really good. So here we go. When is it necessary? What is a water management program? What factors and what are the steps? So when is a water management program necessary? Honestly, anytime you have a building water system where people are immunocompromised, do you necessarily have to have one at your home? Not really, but you should flush your fixtures on a routine basis, but I would say anytime you have the general public in your facility, if a lawyer thinks you should have a WMP, then you should have a WMP, and that's what it all boils down to. It's good public health. It's good, private sector health. It's all that stuff. So going to develop a program to identify places in the building where where the bacteria can grow and take steps to minimize that. Hands down, the most important step. There's 7 basic steps. Hands down, the most important one is establishing the water management program team. A lot of people have a hard time grasping that, but if you don't start with a solid foundation of team members, then you're setting yourself up for failure. So the 7 steps are: get a team. You're going to describe the building. You're going to identify the building or identify the areas where Legionella can grow. You're going to decide control measures, how to apply them, how to monitor them. And then you're going to also establish ways to intervene when controls limits are not met. You're going to make sure the program is running, and then document. Just in I think it was 10 months where our COVID facility was up and running and had active patients. 10 months is not a long time if you're talking about the history of a medical facility, because that's what we had. It's a medical facility, but just in 10 months, the sheer mountain of paperwork we generated to document everything was substantial. So those are the basics, and we're going to run through these things. Okay. Water management team. It's all well and good to have a team of Legionella people that know about the bacteria. But if you don't have an engineer that knows how to break down pipes and fix pipes and swap out water heaters, you're going to fail. If you don't have, someone that can give the okay on the project, you have to bring in management, executive team to say, yeah, go ahead and do this, because the real world, this stuff costs money. And if you don't bring a financial person in to monitor all this stuff, you're setting yourself up for failure. So you want to have a multiple discipline team of people that are invested in the project, understand the downsides of what could happen if you get someone sick, and also have the authority to make decisions. So number 1, establish that team. Okay, you're going to describe your water system, and this could be very basic. So let's think about where we all live, right? So my house, the water comes in, it's like a 2-inch pipe, hits a 60-gallon water heater, then flows through the kitchen, the master bathroom, guest bathroom, and then back out. It could be something as simple as that. Or if you're talking about a 5,000 bed Las Vegas hotel, it's going to be a lot more detailed than that. So that's basically what they're talking about. You're going to describe that water using your text, and then also you can have diagrams. You're going to diagram this stuff, and I can't stress the importance of a diagram, because that will help you determine where to sample. So this is all very it's dry. When you're developing these water management programs, this is not fun, but it's crucially important. It's critical. And then flow diagrams as well. This is also important. And the flow diagrams with various color-coded things, this is taken straight off the CDC Legionella toolkit. This is all good to find out monitoring spots and corrective actions. So you've got your team, you're going to describe your building, and then you're going to identify areas where Legionella can grow, right? So, cooling towers, anywhere where there's a red X, those are the spots where it's going to grow. Hot tubs, sinks, showers, fountains, cooling towers. Those are the main meat and potato areas where your bacteria is going to grow. So identify those areas. Now that you've identified the areas, you're going to have control measures and control limits. So how do you, what's a control measure, and a control point? Control point is the location of where this stuff is going to grow. Control measures are how you're going to control it. You can adjust the heating, you can adjust the disinfection, you're going to set limits on these things. So if you're setting a control limit on your heating, you can say, okay, we want our water at 120. Or if you're going to set a control limit on chlorine, we want that at 1 part per million, things like that. So You always have to document, take flushing logs, take water chemistry logs, all this stuff. And this is just the same thing in the flowchart form. So what you're going to do is you're going to step 4, decide where control measures should be applied, right? So you're going to apply your control measures at a couple different locations. You know, you can look at your sinks and showers right here and take water temperatures there. You can measure for disinfectant there. And you can also increase the water temperature. You can check to see if the water temperature has been increased properly. So a spot where you can apply and monitor could be your water heater, right? Temperature's low at the sink on floor 8. So we're going to adjust the water heater, increase the water temperature, and then we go back to that sink and take temperature. Stagnation is a big one. You know, if you want to identify where water stagnated, you know, if the sink in patient room 6, or if the sink in your ADA compliant shower is not used, you're going to deal with stagnation. So you can get in there and routinely flush. So that's important. So where are you going to apply these things? It's always water temperature and stagnation for the most part. So before you have a problem, you're going to decide what your control measures are going to be. So if you are monitoring the temperature in your patient room number 8 and the sink is measuring 104 degrees Fahrenheit and the shower is 103, that's going to be an issue. You know, you're going to want to increase that water temperature. So you're going to decide that we will monitor and adjust at the water heater that supplies that. And here we are. So here's your water heaters and it shows the flow. You got your fountain here. Let's just say patient room 8 right here at the lower right-hand corner. That room does not have adequate hot water. And it doesn't mean that that's the only one, but the way to apply your corrective action would be right here at your water heater. And you want to determine all these things in advance, because if you're dealing with all this stuff in an outbreak investigation, it's tough. And so we've already gone over a lot of this stuff. You're going to document, you're going to identify that the sink in the shower in room 8 is too low. You're going to see your control limit. This one is set at 124. You're going to take your corrective action, repair the water heater, monitor it, make sure that it has been taken care of, and then document everything with temperature logs. Document, document, document. Because you know what? If you're doing an investigation and you say you did something, but there's no documentation, it did not happen. Verification. So when you're dealing with water management programs, there's industry standards that the private sector uses, and then there's the CDC versions. And sometimes you're going to see steps 6 and 7 combined. Sometimes you're going to see them separated. So verification is we've developed our water management program. We made our team, set control limits, identified areas. We've done all this stuff, and we're routinely flushing and routinely monitoring temperature. But are we actually doing it? Is everything documented? You know, who's doing it? Do we have flushing logs? Are we doing what we said we are doing? That's verification. Validation is our water management program actually working? Because if you don't have a good water management program, you could be doing what you say you're doing, but what you're doing isn't working, you know? Like I could bake a pizza tonight and I could have a great crust and put all the toppings on, and I have all this stuff written down, and my recipe is essentially my water management program. And I verified that I've done everything per the recipe, per the program, but it just so happens that that recipe wants me to cook it at 350 degrees for 2 minutes. You know, I followed it correctly. I followed the program, but when I pull that pizza out of the oven, it's not going to be cooked. So when it comes to validation, is your water management program actually working? And that is determined through routine testing, right? You're going to take Legionella samples. And if you're, regularly coming back with positive Legionella test results, then that means you're going to need to revamp that water management program. Step 7, document. I can't stress this enough. I know I've touched on it multiple times just in this presentation, but keep logs of everything you do, even if you don't have a flushing log and you need to come up with some sort of form, just write it on a scratch paper and then down the road, document it properly. That's very important for lawsuits. I've been deposed several times on Legionella lawsuits. It's not fun, and documentation really makes it easier. Final takeaways, and then we got a couple minutes for questions. And again, thanks to everybody. I really appreciate y'all listening to me drone on for an hour or whatever it is on Legionella. So you're going to want to create a water management program that's specific to your facility, right? As you get into Legionella in the future, because it's coming for all of us. There's laws and there's stuff being actively passed right now in states that are requiring buildings to have water management programs. So what we'll see is just a cookie cutter water management program taken off the internet, and the facility will slap their name on it, and then they'll put it on a shelf and not do anything. So if you don't cater it to your specific facility, it's not going to do you any good, and you're going to get one of your guests or your patients sick. You're going to review it regularly. Typically, you're going to have quarterly meetings with the water management program team. And if you have me involved with the situation with where your health department is investigating your facility, you're going to have like a lot more than quarterly meetings. You got to follow it and again, document. Oops, let's see here. So here's some of the more important links. The top one there, the Prevent Legionnaires Disease training. That's something, if you want to learn about Legionella, don't listen to me, listen to this training. It's the best training out there. It's on the CDC website. And they also have a couple other links, the toolkit and other things. So the CDC has a whole section on their website for Legionella, and I can't stress it enough. They're really good. Here's my contact information, and I see we have 8 comments. So let's just get into these things. And moderators, feel free to jump in. Tell me what you want here. Hi, Rob. Yay, good to see you on here. Hello. Can Legionella grow in ice machines that are not cleaned often or properly? Absolutely. And so if that brings up, okay, I'm drinking ice, but you don't get it through ingestion, you get it through inhalation. So how the heck can that happen, right? So you have the contaminated water going into the ice machine turns it into ice. You go as a guest at a hotel, put it in your water, it melts, and now it's in liquid form. You're drinking, you cough, you choke, you aspirate, it gets in your lungs, you're sick. So if we have a patient that definitely says we use ice machines, we take samples out of the ice machines. You have to take 3 to 4. So our typical samples are a 1 liter water sample, right? So we will take 4 bottles of ice, let it melt, combine it, and then take that to the lab. Great question, Lisa. Should we be testing for the other serogroups or species? Are we missing number of cases by neglecting other species? So if you are, this is from Daisy Steiner, right? So that's a great question, Daisy. So should we be testing? So the answer from a public health perspective is we're not the ones that are doing those testing, right? Those are actual tests being done on patients. So you're talking about testing in a clinical setting, right? However, if you have any sort of sway with your medical facilities that treat these patients, they have couple different options. Urine antigen, that tests for serogroup 1. It's the easiest, most common test, but they can also test sputum for a wide number of things. But the more types of tests you can take, the better. Are we missing a number of cases? Absolutely, yeah. If they take sputum tests or blood tests, you're gonna find more positive cases because serogroups 2 through 14 pop up, during water sampling. I hope I'm answering these questions good
Hey,
enough
Robert,
for y'all.
um,
Yeah,
I'm so sorry. I wish we had more time, but I think we do need to go to a short little break. Just
no
so we're staying
problem.
on track. But if you don't mind like answering these questions on the chat, that
I
is
sure
definitely
will.
okay. Sorry to make you type out everything.
That's all good. Thanks, everybody.
And yeah, thank you for the awesome presentation. We'll take just a short break here. I believe we'll meet back a little bit after 11, just a few minutes past.
Cool. Thanks.
Just thank you very much.